I now take the pleasure to invite Ms. Madhumita Mohanty to deliver the next inaugural note. Ms. Madhumita Mohanty, Director of CDS Development Center, is a renowned retail expert, consultant educator, and thought leader with extensive expertise in the food and grocery and beauty and personal care sectors. She has driven innovation and strategic growth for leading retail brands while mentoring professionals and shaping the future of retail through her insights on emerging trends, consumer behavior, and market dynamics. Her thought leadership continues to inspire the industry. She will present her insights on the topic private label agenda from the retailer's perspective. What are the key drivers? Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Madhumita Mohanty.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank Jacqueline and Mukul for giving me the honor of talking to you all. And I'm delighted to be sharing the stage with Dr. Vijay and Mr. Vikram, and as well as Mr. Sanjay and Mr. Graham, who I met in this morning. So thank you so much. And that's been a very nice introduction, so thanks for that. So today I'm going to talk to you about three things. First is what exactly we mean by private label. Since this is a private label and contract manufacturing expo, I'm assuming all of us have basic level of understanding, so I will not really go too much into that. Secondly, I would like to talk about what the benefits of private label are from a retailer's perspective, so that there is better understanding, and how do we look at forging partnerships between retailers and contract manufacturers. I would be talking about what the consumers perceive of private label, what I have seen in my almost 25 plus years of association with the retail industry. And lastly, I would like to leave you all with the thought, what is it that the contract manufacture industry can do to forge a better partnership with retailers? And if time permits, I would also talk about some interesting case studies from the private label segment. So let's start by understanding what private label really means. Now, we have all been shoppers. Whatever be our profession, we've all been consumers. When we go into a store, let me say Amazon, when we shop online, apart from the hundreds, thousands, and millions of brands that we see, we also look at products under the brand name Amazon Basics. That's nothing but private label. We also look at a brand called Solimo. That is also private label. So private label are brands that a retailer promotes. They need not necessarily manufacture it, though sometimes that also happens. Most of the time, these are the brands which are outsourced to third-party manufacturers or contract manufacturers, what we call as white labeling. A retailer can choose to put their name, like Amazon Basics, Reliance Select, or a retailer can choose to have a completely different brand name which does not have their original identity. Like Solimo, there is no Amazon as a suffix, or Tasty's brand from Reliance Retail, which does not have anything Reliance name with the brand. Now, these are the two large areas of private label for retailers. A third area which is emerging, retailers look at certain brands which they either import or maybe it's a buyout. These are exclusive brands sold in the retailer. For example, Nykaa. Now, K-Beauty is a brand which I see a lot of young girls in this audience, so they would definitely be familiar with K-Beauty by Katrina Kaif. Now, that's sold exclusively on Nykaa. Or a brand like Dot & Key, which has been acquired by Nykaa. That again comes under the private label. So there are retailers who look at exclusivity. They may import these brands. They need not have anything of their original identity. It just says marketed by. So these are the three ways in which retailers look at private label. Now, I have been in this industry and I have been teaching retail management to B-school students for the last 15 years or so. And for 15 years, I've been saying that retailers are pushing private label agenda, which means retailers have always been serious about private label, and now it's become even more serious. So why is it that private label, is gaining so much of importance? First and foremost, it's a no-brainer. Everybody knows it's high margins. Now, if you look at a standard supply chain, let me take an example of, say, a FMCG. So there's the manufacturer, which is the brand, then you have the CNF, then you have distributor, wholesaler, and retailer. At every point, there are certain margins. When a retailer buys directly from the manufacturer, it saves all these channel margin. So that's a huge gain. When a brand tries to reach out to consumers across the country or across the globe, it invests a lot of spend on marketing and advertising. For a retailer, you already have the footfalls. We've got hundreds and thousands of customers coming into our stores. So all we need to do is convert these footfalls into sales. So the spend on advertising and marketing is that much lesser for retailer. And that's how retailers are able to not only sell products at cheaper than national brand, but enjoy far higher margin. Now, it may surprise you to know that private labels have to be minimum 20% cheaper than the national brand. It can be sometimes 50% cheaper. And the kind of margins, say, without naming a brand, say I handle a biscuits category, and say the leading player gives me 15% margin as a retailer, a private label a brand in biscuits can go up to 60 to 70% margin. That's how big the difference is. And this clearly is one of the biggest driver, because why is it important that the margins are higher? Because it directly adds to the profitability, the bottom line. And who doesn't love profits? Yeah, we all are in business to make profits. So that's one of the primary driving reasons why retailers are so obsessed with driving private label agenda. The second reason is customer loyalty. Now, imagine yourself as a shopper. Now you say need to buy a brand of rice or a t-shirt or any product. It can be a microwave. Now, if you think of the retailers that you go to, what is the difference? Now, if you're buying biscuits, the same Parle-G is available everywhere. If you're buying a t-shirt of say, Arrow or Van Heusen, it's available everywhere. What is the difference? Of course, there are many other differences, but I will not talk about it. I'm going to focus only on private label. Private label is the biggest differentiator which will make a consumer favor retailer A over retailer B, C. Say you've gone to a store, you've picked up their private label and you really like the product. Next time you want to buy it, where do you go? You would go to that retailer, and that's customer loyalty, customer stickiness for you. And when you go to a store, it can be a physical store, it can be an online store. You're not going to go pick up that specific product and walk out or log out of the online platform. You will browse for a little bit, you will pick up, and as retailers, we know how to entice you to kind of pick up more than what's there in your shopping list. That's our job. So customer loyalty and stickiness is the second reason. The third reason is the turnaround time of a product introduction is far smoother because of the supply chain I just described in a private label product than, say, a national brand. Say I need, because a retailer is in direct touch with customers, there is a certain need which has been discovered. From the identification of the need to a launch, the turnaround time is far shorter than it would be for a large player. So that again is another reason. And as a fallout of this, a niche segment. Now, a national player may not be as interested in exploring niches, but a retailer can tap into niche. Let me share a personal example to illustrate this point better. In my previous experience, as part of a large retail chain, we had a category known as bath and body. Now, bath and body even today is not as big a category, say as soaps. Most people, most Indians that is, use soaps rather than a shower gel for their morning bath. Now, bath and body is a small niche category, but it was showing phenomenal growth, 20-30% growth year on year. There were national brands, but there weren't too many brands. If I talk of biscuits, if I talk of soaps, if I talk of a shampoo, I mean, I can rattle off some 20 brand names off the cuff. But if I talk of shower gels, there were just 2 or 3 leading players, and that's when we decided that let's look at launching a private label under shower gels. And in this context, me and my team, we explored options within the country. We looked at various contract manufacturers for this. We visited international trade fairs ranging from, there's a large B2B fair called Canton Fair in China, Guangzhou. We looked at Cosmoprof. They have many editions, including one Indian edition since the last 3 years. So we visited Cosmoprof in Hong Kong, and we looked and evaluated vendors both within our country as well as outside. And finally, we launched our own label. And you'll be surprised to know that within a few months, the private label that we launched in Bath and Body kind of occupied 1/3 the sales of the entire category, and that's a lot, considering that there were 2 or 3 leading national players in the segment. So that's how a retailer can actually look at a very small category and gain dominance by introducing a private label in that. These are some of the reasons. Another reason which is not much talked about, but since I'm here to share my experience, I'm going to share that as well. So it can give you a bargaining leverage while negotiating or fixing the terms of trade with your brand partners. Imagine a situation where you are negotiating terms of trade with a leading player, and you get stuck at a point. Now, if you have a dominant private label player in that segment, how do you think the negotiation is going to go? Right? It's all about a balance of power. So no matter how big the large player is, if you have, there's in negotiation, we use the term BATNA, BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement. So if you have your BATNA in place, and private label is that BATNA for a retailer. So that's an insider trade secret which I've shared with you all, that private label can provide that negotiating leverage for you. Apart from, of course, if you face supply chain issues, if you have, due to some reason, you don't have stocks in stores, private label can offer you that alternative for your consumers. Rather than empty shelves, private label can be used to fill it up. And because retailers kind of push their private label so much, private label products very rarely go out of stock. They're always available. So it's great for the consumers. Now that I've spoken about the benefits, let's come to the consumer side. How do consumers perceive private label? For years, and even today, private label has been perceived as a low-cost alternative, a value-for-money alternative. It has not really gained the kind of customer loyalty that probably retailers would want it to. But COVID kind of flipped the situation. When there was a lot of availability issues with national players, consumers started picking up private label. And a McKinsey study says that almost 60% of American consumers tried private label during this period. And the same is the situation for Indian players as well. So once the COVID and the lockdown was behind us, consumers who adopted private label went back to it. And if a retailer has a good private label, which is not only of equivalent, sometimes superior quality, gives you better prices, packaging is good, it delivers what it promises, then why would a consumer not keep patronizing it? And that's something which we are seeing now. A lot of retailers are switching to private label, provided there's obviously a caveat there. You cannot play the pricing game for too long. You cannot say that, oh, I'm the cheapest, and expect customers to patronize you forever. You need to deliver quality, and that is what is changing the game in the retail landscape. Retailers are treating their private label with a lot more seriousness than it was earlier. Not only are they cheaper than national brands, they are of equivalent and sometimes superior quality. The packaging has improved, so the packs look good. There's enough noise being made around it in terms of advertising and marketing. So the consumers have been receptive to that. When you walk into a retail store, or you open your Amazon, your Nykaa, your Myntra, or any of the online platforms, you will definitely see private label being pushed. In stores, when you go, you would find more facings or more visibility. You would find your store staff talking about it. Online platforms, you would see banner ads. If you search for a soap or you search for a t-shirt or even as something as a towel, you would find, the recommended, the algorithm is so configured that your recommendations will always put private label on top. So all this has led to a more increasing rate of acceptance of private label, and that's the scenario as far the consumers are concerned. Now, I spoke about value for money or perceived, lesser quality. So, what do you think about the possibility of a premium private label? Is that even a possibility? Can there be a premiumization? Now here I will talk about a very interesting, one of my favorite examples of how a private label from a retailer has occupied the premium positioning and gone on to become a national brand. Some of you may have heard of a large retail chain called Boots from UK. It's into, they call it pharmacy, but here we call it as beauty and personal care, and of course there are also pharmaceutical products. So Boots is the largest retailer in UK in this segment, and there's a brand called Number 7. Initially it was launched as a private label product. It's in the skincare segment, and over the period of years, the consumer acceptance and demand was so much that it moved beyond the stores of Boots to become a national player in the skincare and personal care segment. And skincare, mind you, is a very, very customer loyalty centric business. Consumers do not change. I mean, I might change a brand of biscuit, but I will not change a brand of skincare so easily. So to achieve that is no mean task. And it is in the premium segment, so yes, it is possible. I would love for an Indian brand to kind of occupy that space, and I will come to how you can help as contract manufacturers in that. The other interesting example I would like to talk about is not in the premium space, but it's a fun example, so why not hear about it? So again, this also is an example from the UK retail segment, which is Sainsbury. Sainsbury is a large supermarket chain in UK, and they launched, I'm talking of decades earlier, but it's something which I came up and I really liked the example. They launched something known as Classic Cola as competition to Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola, everybody knows, is the largest selling, aerated beverage across the world. In fact, the Coca-Cola mission is, instead of water, people should drink Coke. Personally, I'm happy that to see that that is no longer the case. People have been moving into healthier options. I mean, I keep whoever I meet who drinks aerated drinks, I keep saying don't. But then that's just my personal push. So Classic Cola was launched as competition to Coca-Cola, and what Sainsbury did is they copied the logo. So you can just Google it later, don't Google now. They copied the Coke logo to the extent that Classic Cola became the number one cola in Sainsbury. It occupied 60% market share, and Coca-Cola market share dropped from 66% to less than half, 30%. And it was so successful, and because Sainsbury is so big, in the UK market, Classic Cola started occupying a 15% market share overall, which is huge. And obviously Coke is not going to keep quiet, so there were cases, legal cases, and Sainsbury had to kind of bow down and change the logo. So the reason I'm giving this example is that, sometimes you feel, oh, private label is just there, it's just something which retailers push. No. So these are two examples where I show you that, one, a premium segment can be also occupied and mastered by private label. Second, nobody would ever in their right mind think of taking on the number one. Sainsbury did with a lot of success. So we've spoken about the benefits, we've spoken about consumer acceptance, we've spoken about some interesting case studies. Now, because we are at this private label conclave organized by IPLCM, so what is it that contract manufacturers can do to partner better with retailers? From my experience, I see that with retailers and brands, it's always a discussion about cost. I want lower cost because I can, gain more margin. So how do we move from that mentality of just cost, and supply discussion to a more strategic partnership? What is it that contract manufacturers can do? Now, I would urge the contract manufacturing industry to do a couple of things. They have expertise, which is clearly much more than what the retailers have. And I say this with full confidence because I lead teams which are into this buying and sourcing. Now, the category managers are dealing with too many things, too less time. And trust me when I say it, I know. They don't have the time to go and do in-depth research and understand a category. The brands know it better. So a private label manufacturer or a contract manufacturer has in-depth knowledge about the domain, which just like, Mr. Vikram here would be knowing much more about nutraceutical industry than what I know, because that's his job, that's his domain, that's his passion. So how about tapping into that resource pool? Rather than treat a contract manufacturer as just somebody who I will outsource my job to and look at cost, how about that I kind of dip into his or her expertise pool and see what I can do to better my offering? Now, as contract manufacturers, how can you, visit trade fairs? A lot of manufacturers do that. I was speaking to Vikram a while back and that's what he mentioned. So visit, B2B exhibitions, trade fairs, find out what the trends are, and can there be a discussion, a healthy partnership with your retailer partner? So just to illustrate what I'm saying, let me give an example. Pardon me for giving only beauty-related examples because that's been the industry I last worked with. So let's say lipsticks. Now, so there is a trend of reds and maroons and pinks. Now, if a contract manufacturer who also manufactures for a retailer as well as the leading brands, and I have seen that, we got our stuff done from private label from a nail polish manufacturer based in Mumbai without taking names. And when I visited their factory, I found all the top brands of cosmetics, their nail polishes being made there. So and the pricing obviously is different. So they know what works, they know what doesn't work. They visit different countries, trade fairs. Now what if they kind of sit with the retail partners and say that I find lighter shades of lipsticks or a black nail polish or a blue nail polish kind of picking up sales overseas and in Southeast Asia and Middle East because they are the closest to what trends come to India. How about launching a line? That's the kind of thing which a retailer would appreciate. I mean, apply it to whichever industry you come from, what your products are. How about you share that with retailers and say, let's launch a line of that. And, let's kind of take a risk on this together. Move from a cost and supply-oriented discussion to a strategic partnership. Offer insights about trends, offer insights about gaps. Now, a lot of contract manufacturers, they have the sense of fear because sometimes large retailers can come up, not can, they do come up with as very aggressive and very, very dominant. So they are scared to share their expertise. How about you kind of say that, hey, this is the gap I think you should be launching because of this. I think that's going to be the way to go in future. And that's what I foresee happening. Rather, I would manifest that as happening, and organizations like yours, Jacqueline, IPLCM would probably play an important role in bringing the two together, your private label manufacturers and retailers, to have a more strategic partnership. And with that I end. I hope you've got some new insights into the topic, and I've given you some food for thought. If I have, then I consider my time spent well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madhumita Mohanty, for sharing your experience, your inspiring and impactful words.